Hi guys. A few weeks ago I started a series on the web server. The first session demonstrates how to host static HTML files using an Apache web server. In a future video, I'm going to show you how you can add dynamic features to your website using scripts. At this point, I'm going to switch platforms, and I want to show you why. In the first video, I used a Windows desktop. In the next video, I'm going to use a Linux server hosted on Amazon Web Services Elastic Compute Cloud, or EC2. There are a couple of reasons for this. One is that this platform is more production ready. You can't host your website from your desktop. The other reason is that it is just easier and faster. AWS EC2 and Linux both have learning curves, so you may not understand everything I'm doing, but hopefully it will whet your appetite to start exploring these superb tools. Here is an overview of what we're going to cover. So I'll speak briefly about opening an AWS account. Then we're going to spin up a Linux server. So let's look at how to create an AWS account. I started by searching AWS Getting Started. This took me to a resource with plenty of useful information and a button to create an AWS account. I clicked this button and I had to fill out a form with my contact details, and I had to provide my credit card details. Now, one of the great features of AWS is the free tier. So I'm just going to do a search for AWS free tier. Now, the AWS free tier allows you 12 months of limited free usage that you can use to just play with the platform, or if you are starting a small business, to help you cover your hosting costs. AWS is an industrial strength cloud hosting platform, and Amazon is adding new features to the platform all the time, so getting started can feel a bit intimidating, but all we want to do today is just to get an Ubuntu server up and running. Right, so let's start up an Ubuntu server in Amazon Web Services. So I'm going to start by signing into the AWS Management Console, using the username and password that I provided when I opened my account. And the part of AWS that I'm interested in is the Elastic Compute Cloud, EC2. And this is the part of AWS that will allow me to start up a server and will run that server for me. So you can see I've got 0 running instances, or 0 running servers. And if I click on instances, I can see the list of servers. You can see from previous takes of this video, I've got 2 terminated servers. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to launch a new server. I'm most comfortable with Ubuntu, and you can see these are marked, the ones that are eligible for the free tier. So I'm going to go ahead and start up an Ubuntu server. Now it's going to ask you how much memory, how many CPUs do you want your server to have. I'm going to go with this one, which is free tier eligible, 1 CPU, 1 gig of memory. Right, and I'm going to just accept the defaults and launch. Now it wants me to select a key pair. So key pairs are the way that you authenticate yourself when you log into your server. I don't have any key pairs set up, so I'm going to create a new key pair, and the name I'm just going to call default, and I'm going to download this key pair. Right, and this file is going to allow me to log into my instance, to my server. I'm going to go ahead and launch. Right, so it's busy starting up, and I can click View Instances. And there's my server. It's in pending state. and in about 40 seconds time it will be running. Right, let's log into our server. You see the server is running. I can see the IP address of the server here. I'm going to copy that. So the first thing I need to do is the key file that I downloaded needs to be moved into the correct location, and it needs to have the correct permission set, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, great. Now I can connect to my server using SSH. I'm going to log in as user Ubuntu, which is the default user for an Ubuntu server. I need to provide the IP address of the server, and I'm going to be identifying myself using the private key file. And we're using this private key file instead of a password because it's a more secure way of authenticating. Right, and we're now connected to our server, and it's displayed some information, the server, the version, some system information. And next up we're going to install Apache. One of the really great features of Ubuntu is it uses a package manager to install software, so you don't have to faff around with searching the web for software you want to install and then downloading an installer and executing an installer. You can just use the package manager. On a new installation like this, the first thing I need to do is I need to update the package manager. So that just grabs the latest versions of all the software that's available. And now I can install Apache. Next step, I need to start Apache. And there you go, Apache is started. Now let's test to see if our Apache web server is actually running. So we take our IP address and pop it into our web browser, and we would expect to see the Apache kind of welcome page or default page that appears, and you can see it's not loading, and that's because the firewall settings on our server are set to very restrictive by default. So let's open up port 80, which is the HTTP port. So I'm going to come through to my security groups, which really is kind of another word for firewall. Okay, and if I have a look at the inbound, the ports that are open for inbound connections, the only port that is open is port 22, and that's the SSH port. So that's how I was able to log into the server using SSH. I'll edit this, and I'll add the HTTP port, which is port 80. And I'll just stop this and refresh it. And there you go. There's the default web page when you set up a new Apache instance. And now we have an Apache server running in AWS on Ubuntu, on an Ubuntu Linux server. This process took quite a lot longer than normal because I was explaining things as I was going along, but I think you can see that if I wasn't stopping to kind of explain things, just how quickly I'd be able to set up an Apache server in AWS on Ubuntu. And this is one of the reasons why I'm going to be using it moving forward because it's just a lot faster for me, a lot more convenient for me. Okay, hopefully that was helpful to you. And if you've got any questions or comments or feedback of how I can make these videos better for you, please just leave comments in the comments section below. Thanks.